Hollywood hospital, she went to acting school and dated Jack Carson, who's in the film. So every time Mildred Pierce came on, it was requirement in our house that we watch it. But with all of that, I've never gotten tired of it because it's a great movie. The thing that, of the many things about Mildred Pierce that are interesting, it was a film that almost did not get made. James M. Cain published Mildred Pierce in 1941. He was originally offered $25,000 from MGM for the rights for Double Indemnity in 1935, and that got canceled due to censorship reasons. And so it took 9 years for Billy Wilder to bring Cain's novel Double Indemnity to the screen, and Mildred's cinematic champion was not the director Michael Curtiz, but the producer, whose name you'll see on the credits, named Jerry Wald. Jerry Wald had a pair of initial treatments, script treatments written, including one by Cain, that were rejected by the Motion Picture Association of America Censors Office, a man named Joseph I. Breen, who was like the prelate censor, the cardinal, as it were, censoring everything. And he wrote Jack Warner a letter that Mildred Pierce contains, quote, so many sordid and repellent elements that we respectfully suggest you dismiss this story from any further consideration, unquote. Wald, who is often associated with Bud Schulberg's novel, What Makes Sammy Run, Wald was the whirlingest dervish of them all. And he had a file cabinet of 10 million story treatments, always had a better idea, but you needed to be the last guy in the room to talk to Jerry. He met with Breen and Warner, convinced them that Mildred could be made at a higher level that solved some of the censorship problems about the then taboo subjects of infidelity, alcohol, Mildred's daughter having an affair with her mother's husband, little things like that. He also got the recently acquired Joan Crawford, who had been dropped by MGM as box office poison. Jack Warner picked him up. Jack Warner was the original purveyor of the Actors 99-cent store in trying to get a bargain. There are conflicting accounts about whether Barbara Stanwyck was going to play Mildred or not. There's two versions of that. But interestingly, the script that finally made it to the screen that was approved was the work of Renaud McDougall, a very competent screenwriter, and an uncredited Catherine Turney, along with a little bit of William Faulkner for a little bit of gothicness in it. Miss Turney wrote two different screenplays, with the second one incorporating some of the elements you'll see with the flashback and the murder and so on and so forth that Wald insisted on. Ironically, you will not see Miss Turney's name on the credits because her agent said, you don't want to accept a shared credit. No one will ever remember you. And Miss Turney lived a long life, and she said that was probably the worst advice I ever got. Now, Michael Curtiz was Warner Brothers' top director, and he had initial concerns about Crawford's MGM lineage. Warner Brothers was the ultimate proletarian, gun-popping waitresses, gangsters. No studio would have two stars that looked like James Cagney and Edward G. Robinson. They wouldn't fit at MGM. But he thought that Joan was a prima donna in shoulder pads. And in fact, at one point, she wore a dress that was a frock she bought at Sears to look like the working class version of Joan you see earlier in the picture. And he came and he actually tore her dress and said, no shoulder pads, this is not MGM. And so she ran crying into her bedroom. But as she said later, Mr. Curtiz first gave me a postgraduate course in humiliation. Then after he found out I could take it, he started training me. Anne Blythe is Vita, the daughter from hell. When I interviewed Anne Blythe for my biography on Michael Curtiz, I was surprised, no, I was stunned, when she told me how much she loved Mike Curtiz. Now, this was not a reaction that I got from a lot of people and a lot of anecdotes about Curtiz. She said, I was very, very fond of him. He had a great sense of humor. He was easy to work with. And this testimonial ran counter to the conventional wisdom that all actors hated Mike Curtiz. In fact, Curtiz tested 20 different actresses for the challenging role of Vida, because you have to transition from a girl carrying her books from high school to someone sitting on a piano drinking champagne and romancing Zachary Scott. So it was tough. So they tested Maxine Cooper, Martha Vickers, Mala Powers, Benita Granville, and then when they tested Blythe, she said Curtiz looked at her, and of course Joan showed up to do all the tests personally with these actresses. She was a consummate professional. And she said, Mike nodded his head and winked at me, and I knew I had to part. The other thing is, no matter how many times I've seen this movie, when the Max Steiner score comes up and the credits roll, the hair still stands up. It's fabulous. One little bit of trivia, the Mildred Pierce beach house that opens the picture is, alas, no longer standing. The house was located at Latigo Cove near Malibu, and it washed away during a winter storm in 1983. And at the time of Mildred's production, it was being leased by Anatoly Litvak. And the day after Pearl Harbor, Litvak was living there, and William Wyler and John Huston met with them, and the three of them decided, how are we going to serve America during World War II? So there was some other history there. But for now, with all of that, please enjoy one of the greatest Hollywood movies of the 1940s, as directed by Michael Curtiz, starring Joan Crawford Unbound in her Oscar-winning part, Jack Carson, Zachary Scott, Eve Arden, and Ann Blythe, Mildred Pierce. Thank you. Thank you.